Even if you want to improve your backhand, you have to practice and learn. Or if you want to study algebra, you have to practice and learn. We all accept that in every other field, especially like being a doctor or being an astronaut, there's a lot to conquer. But in marriage, do we take that as a course and really study it and work hard? No, we're supposed to it's supposed to come in through the fingertips. And it doesn't.
Mid-South Viewpoint, a Christian news and information feature of Bott Radio Network 640 AM. Discussing the news, views, issues, and concerns that affect our community. Join us now for today's edition of Mid-South Viewpoint.
Sincere Christian women repeatedly reveal that after only a few years or maybe even a few months of marriage, their Prince Charming has lost his charm. After learning the principles in wife school, these same women find their marriages revolutionized. Today, we're going to talk with the author of this revolutionary book, Wife School, where women learn the secrets of making husbands happy. I like the title. I like Julie Gordon, the author. Julie, hi, and welcome to our program.
Thanks, Byron. Glad to be here.
And we were just kind of connecting the dots and realizing that we know each other. And when I received the call from a mutual friend of ours about us getting together, and first of all, let me say, I get books all the time. I've got an office full of books that are sent to me for potential interviews. I don't do book interviews. So folks are saying, well, then why is Julie on? Well, there's a connection here, but I think the things we're going to talk about in our program today are worth really us sharing, and it fits into the format of what we're going to talk about on Mid-South Viewpoint. When it comes to having a healthy marriage and making families thrive and live together better, I want to provide information like that. So from time to time, I'll go outside the box and bring listeners program like we're going to have today. So our children know each other, and we've known each other for a number of years. It's good to see you again, Julie.
Well, I'm appreciative of all the good work you're doing in Memphis, Byron.
Now, is Memphis, and I don't even know this question, is Memphis home for you originally?
Been here since I was 18. My husband was in a nonprofit organization that took us to Virginia for 7 years, but I've been here since I was 18.
And where was home for you growing up for those first 18 years?
The South, Arkansas, Missouri.
Oh, really?
Texas.
Where
moved
specific in
bit.
Arkansas?
Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And then we lived in Dallas, and I was in Dallas in high school. And then I came here when I was 18 and went to Memphis. It was Memphis State then.
Yeah.
And then I got my master's at Memphis also, but it's Memphis University, of course, now.
And in your master's is in marriage and family counseling.
Marriage and family counseling. And
why did you choose that?
I think I chose that because I'm not sure that my situation growing up was probably my parents were not believers, and I loved my mother, I loved my father, but they were not believers. And so there was tension growing up, and so I just think I was, since a child, very interested in relationships and had no idea, had a lot of failure in a lot of ways as a child and as a young adult in relationships. And so honestly, I was going to be a psychiatrist. That was the first thing. And then I realized, well, I don't really want to prescribe pills. I really want to wrestle with the issues. So then someone told me about the master's in counseling, and so that's the direction I went.
When you talk about relationships, what about your relationship with Christ? When did that begin?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I was going back for my pre-med because I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and there were these creationists that came on campus. And I was taking biology, and we were studying evolution at the moment. I was an atheist. I wasn't an agnostic. I was an atheist. And this friend of mine just started asking me to go to, Bellevue Baptist Church. And so here I'm hearing Adrian Rogers. I'm listening to creationists, and I'm an atheist. And God just took all that and broke through it all. And I became a Christian January 24th, 1980.
So you were a bona fide atheist?
Bona fide atheist.
Now, what brought you to that point of being an atheist?
I don't even know. I just didn't believe.
Was there a tragedy in your life or something you thought maybe God should show up for and he didn't, and so you just said, can't be a God?
No, I just didn't think there was a God. I thought it was all about man. We somehow got here, bought into the Big Bang, just didn't know. Just stupidity is all I can say.
Maybe something you kind of took in from your parents or
my
even
parents
a faith?
Weren't believers, but I don't even know where it came from.
So church wasn't even a part of your home?
No.
Growing up?
No, not really.
So Christ became a reality. You realized that he was the maker of it all there at the University of Memphis when you made that decision?
Right. And so then it was the flip-flop of flip-flops. My life just opened up. And what was so interesting is that I was not a reader growing up. I was not a reader at all. And I became this reader, this avid, voracious reader. And what I read was books on the Christian life and books on relationships. Then, after I became a Christian, I felt like God was leading me into marriage and the family counseling. And books have been, I'm crazy about books. That's probably where, between my counseling and books, that's where I've really learned what I feel like I've written about in this book.
Well, we're going to delve into what you've written about this book. Again, Wife School, where women learn the secrets of making husbands happy. Well, Julie, isn't it the mission of all married women to control their husbands in order to really get what they want?
Oh, that's a funny thing. I've been in books learning about marriage for, years and years and years. I started having groups when I was 33. Okay, so I've been doing this a long time. And I've studied this topic you just said about authority. And I remember this was about 10 years ago. I was in the parking lot with my husband, and we were on the phone on a telephone interview with a counselor over one of our kids, one of our 5 boys. I know you can't believe I would need counseling with 5 boys, but we were on the phone with a counselor about one of our boys, and the counselor says to us, and now we're on speakerphone, he says to me, now, Julie, do you ever resist the leadership of your husband? I'm like, what? We're not talking about me. We're talking about this kid that won't get with the program. This isn't about me. And that was the beginning of, even though I had mentored women about their marriage, Byron, and I had read books, I had taught on authority. Okay, I have done seminars on authority. Resisting the leadership of your husband was a new thought. And so then I got hooked up with another friend of ours that you and I, Kendall Tashi, and she and I were in a co-Bible study. But then we were doing a seminar for our church called Winning and Keeping the Hearts of Husbands. So we're at Ruby Tuesdays, and there's 6 women around the booth. And so I said, okay, now one of the A's we're going to talk about is authority. So Kendall starts talking. I had never heard anyone talk about authority and live authority like she had. And then she and I became close friends. She's one of my very best friends now. But what she lives showed me, even though I'd read it in books, gone to a million women's conferences, how she lived authority. So this, what you said, was hilarious about controlling your husbands, because it is in a woman's nature from Genesis 3 to be contentious, and it's where we default to. It's our default mode. And so if there's not the Holy Spirit and a conscious putting that away, laying that down, that's who comes back up in marriage.
And so if the husband teeters on maybe a weak leadership in the home, it's really going to come through.
Oh, and it's so true. In Proverbs 14:1, I just love this verse. Okay, I just love this verse because it says, the wise woman builds her home, and the foolish one with her own hands tears it down. And there are a lot of ways to tear down your home, but men who are not natural leaders, you have to hand them the scepter. You have to hand it to them. That means you have to put yourself under, and you have to learn to ask them questions and ask their opinions and push them up as leaders, because a lot of men aren't natural leaders. And that's one of the things I teach in this book is how to do that.
Well, Julie, there's some women out there that are thinking right now, you know what? I'm just tired of trying to hand him the scepter. I mean, he just should know these things. I mean, he's the guy. Why do I have to remind him? Why do I need to be the initiator of him realizing that he needs to take on that leadership role?
One thing I just love about women, and this is just a gift we've been given, is our best gift is our ability to influence. And men respond well to meekness and to influencing. And when we as women learn what it is that men need, learn what it is that men want, and we make our husbands happy in a biblical way, but it's also, a lot of this is science, they open their hearts to hearing what we have to say.
What have you learned personally about your husband, David, in making him happy all these years?
That's such a funny question, because when we were dating, one of his friends warned him that I was going to be high maintenance. He went ahead and took the plunge. But when we were even in Virginia, I remember one night in bed, and I was laying there carrying on about something he didn't do to meet my needs. And I remember he said to me, your needs are like the Atlantic Ocean. So I don't just act like, I understand being the woman and not getting this, okay? And I've had all these groups of women in my home, and I understand about men not getting how to lead from a lot of those women. And so my husband is one of those really awesome guys, okay? But he is a human being, and he, of course, has things he especially cares about. And the thing that my husband cares about is chapter 8 in the book. And I don't really want to talk about it on the air too much, but there was something in our marriage that really was important to him that I wasn't getting. The fact that men need admiration, the fact that men need appreciation, that's all very true too. But probably another thing I really need to talk about that my husband needed was he needed me to not try to change him all the time. He didn't want to be in a program where he was always in a change and you need to do this and you need to do that. He needed for me to relax and enjoy him and accept him for who he was instead of always trying to, women are nest builders. And that's a beautiful thing about women, that we're always trying to beautify our nest. But we got to give men a break, okay? We have to accept certain things about them instead of always trying to change them. And they get that right. Okay, now here's the new thing I want. Men would like to just relax and us enjoy who they are. That's actually chapter 2. The whole chapter is on acceptance.
And what about when there doesn't seem to be a lot of common interest? There was that initial bliss that started off, but as years move in, time comes to pass. There seems sometimes to be a separation. She has her interest, he has his interest.
Byron, that's such a great question, and that's one of the A's. There's 8 A's. Those are the main anchors in the book. And one of the A's is activities, and it talks about the marriage is very static. It is not the same when you're in your 40s as when you're in your 20s. And this takes a lot of work. I mean, we've had this, okay? My husband likes sports, and he likes news, and he likes business, and I like relationships and books. And so we had to consciously work hard on finding things that we both did like, and we call it recreational companionship. I mean, we found concerts, and we have movies. We actually like really good preaching together. We're in downline now. We both love that. So we've had to work hard. We used to camp early, but even before, early on. I mean, I don't like camping anymore. That's bugs. That's dirty. I want air conditioning. But he still loves the outdoors. So he's going to take our boys on a trip this summer. And I'm not going on that rafting trip, okay? I'm taking my daughter to a hotel. But anyhow, as far as the marriage, we work hard on finding ways to still have fun.
What if the husband doesn't want to receive all of the happiness that you're trying to bestow on him?
I haven't found a husband yet, Byron, who didn't like what these 8 A's are, okay, because they meet a man's soul needs. A lot of women are surprised what men really want, okay? A lot of times women say, well, I cook for him and I do his laundry and I take care of his children. My gosh, I'm a great wife. And yet they don't give him admiration. They don't give him the attention that men, they have found out that one of the main reasons men stray in marriage, and it's not so much about the sex as it is the attention. And so here we have a marriage now that, she doesn't know what he's doing that day, and she doesn't know what's really going on at a deep level. All of us want to be deeply listened to. John Gottman's one of the premier secular marriage counselors in the United States, and he's got this incredible book. His thing is this thing about listening and paying attention. It's huge to human beings. And so we get married and we forget. We still have to do that in a huge way to our spouse so that they feel important and they feel cared about.
In your years of counseling, what seems to be the biggest trouble that women have with their husbands?
Well, that they just don't understand husbands. And they have this, John Bryson said this Sunday. He said that when your expectations are at the top of the page and reality is at the bottom of the page, the distance in between is disappointment. And that describes the girls in my groups. They have these huge expectations of Prince Charming, and what they get is Joe. They get regular Joe, okay? And regular Joe is pretty good. But because we have these romantic comedy standards, he's always a disappointment. And we don't know how to make him happy. We don't know how to ask appropriately. Appropriately is the key word there for what we want. And there we have marriage. And sadly, I know, Byron, you do these interviews all the time, and I looked around Sunday morning and Sandy Wilson was talking at Downline, and I'll get my numbers wrong here, but there's 123 neighborhoods in Memphis, and 97 are distressed or vulnerable, and there's this huge work to do in Memphis, and I'm all over that. And I looked at the church on Sunday morning, and I thought, what these women, the marriage, the problems in the marriage, these women are struggling in the marriage. The men are struggling. If we could get the marriages really great again, we could do more work in Memphis. And then a missionary picked up my book when staying with a friend of mine in Dallas. And he said, we need this on the mission field. Here we're having all this struggle in our marriage on the mission field, but yet here's this great call God has. And then I think this is what Satan is using to keep so much of the great work going, because in our own homes, we're not having the comfort and what we really want.
You know, money always seems to be a big conflict in many marriages. How do you deal with these tough issues in a home like finances?
Well, finances are gigantic. And I will tell you that the secret that we found out was Dave Ramsey. We also did Crown Ministry, but I'm a spender and he's a saver. And that has been a huge issue in our marriage, gigantic. So we had to get a lot of help for that. And what's so funny about marriage, and I think about this all the time, even if you want to improve your backhand, you have to practice and learn. Or if you want to study algebra, you have to practice and learn. We all accept that in every other field, especially like being a doctor or being an astronaut, there's a lot to conquer. But in marriage, do we take that as a course and really study it and work hard? No, we're supposed to it's supposed to come in through the fingertips. Yeah. And it doesn't. I mean, you take every person you know and you say, what are the top 5 goals in your life? And if they're married, marriage will be in that top 5 goals. Okay, then you say, what have you done to really study marriage? They say, well, I've watched TV.
We think it's just supposed to happen.
We think it's supposed to happen. And yet, it's like any other subject. There are definite things you can learn that change what your marriage is like. So a lot of men, they don't want to read a book, okay? So I wrote my book, and I taught my women in my groups how to make your husband happy, number one, and then how you teach him your needs. And I teach them that because a lot of husbands don't want to go to seminars. A lot of husbands don't want to read books. So what we do now is we teach our husbands what we need. It has been excellent.
Julie, Christian marriages are not immune to separation and divorce. What about that woman maybe is in that second marriage? Something tragically dissolved that first marriage. She's in a second marriage, and some of the same things are happening in the second marriage that she encountered in the first marriage.
Well, marital happiness is contingent on needs getting met. So I would say to you, if you're in your second marriage, is that you have to learn the needs of your husband, and you have to learn to meet those needs, and then you'll have to teach him what it is you need. But it's after he's happy, because, men, and this is just the way it is, Byron. I mean, I don't want to make excuses for this, but a lot of men, it's just not on their radar. I just read an article in a secular magazine while I was in the beauty shop, and it said this is what men think about. 30% work, 30% money, 30% sex, 10% hobbies. Women don't think about that. Now, that's not a Christian man, what a Christian man needs to be thinking about. But I'm just saying the secular man, that's what he thinks about. So we have to realize as women, we don't get men. We don't get you all. So we have to study you. We have to study you like a course. And then it's awesome if men will then read a book on women, if they'll go to a course. My husband, I'm very selective in what I ask my husband for. I'm very strategic about what I ask my husband for. I have the girls in my group make lists of the 5 top things they care about. And then they ask their husbands for those things. So I asked my husband will you go to this wedding seminar with me? Will you go to this counseling course that they're teaching on marriage? I mean, we've done that for years. Those are the things I ask for. I don't ask for, I'm mad about how much money we're spending on the flowers, okay? Because that's not important. And so when you get women really focused on the things they care about and just asking their husbands for those things, and you're meeting the man's needs, he opens towards you. And so back to your question if you're on your second marriage, you have to learn all this. You have to learn all this. You can't expect to know this without studying this like a course.
What about those 5 top things that you mentioned in your women's group that you asked them to write down? Can you maybe share some of those things that were on their list?
These are all Christian women in my group, and so these women really care that the family walks with the Lord, that they go to church, and that they are serious about their lives with the Lord. That's on the Christian women's list. Marriage and having a really good marriage, that's on all these women's list. And then huge on the next list is fatherhood. They want their husband to be a good father. I mean, those are the top 3 right there. Next after that, a lot of times, of course, then it spreads out according to what women want. But women want financial support. Women want intimacy. They want to talk about how the husband feels, and they want him to listen to how she feels. Women want domestic support in the home. They want the husband to help. They got all these screaming kids, and they've got all this going on, and they want the husband to help. So that list, number 4, 5, 6, and 7, those kind of changed. But those first three boulders, the husband's relationship with the Lord, those are the things women most care about. Every woman has those things on her list.
Well, what about when the leading the family spiritually depends primarily on the wife? How does she communicate to her husband without him thinking that she's trying to be holier than he is?
I love, 1 Peter 3. And 1 Peter 3 is, if any of your husbands do not understand, do not obey the word. All right, it's gentle and quiet spirit is the answer. I tell women all the time, I had an example of one of the girls in my group, her husband was not saved. So, you can't expect a husband who's not saved to be a spiritual leader. And over again, you love him like this. And don't teach the children in front of him about Christ. That's throwing it in his face. So you love him with all these different ways, appreciation, attention, finding activities, authority. You love him like that. And then you teach your children to love their father, to honor their father, to respect their father. When your father's around, we hand him the scepter. This girl, when she came into my group, that husband, rah, rah. And I just had coffee with her this month. He has gotten saved. And he's awesome. He's completely flip-flopped. He has flip-flopped. And this is an awesome guy anyhow. Just an awesome, but he wasn't saved. And so she did all that. She put herself under a man who was not a Christian. And she handed him the scepter, and she got those children admiring their father. And this is another thing. Women, don't be a know-it-all around your husband. Don't be a know-it-all. Ask his opinion. And when the children are around, direct their attention to their father and praise the father in front of the children. A lot of times when there's tension in the marriage, Byron, women pull the children to themselves. They're like, okay, these are mine. He doesn't treat me right, and he's not getting them. I want women to hear this. You are robbing from your children. Your children need to love and respect their father for their development. It's so selfish to pull the children to yourself just because you have tension in the marriage. It's selfish of you, and women don't understand that. So you want to, for your children's sake, you want to be promoting their relationship with their father. Never criticize your husband to your children. Never criticize your husband to your children.
Julie, what about the wife that discovers her husband is emotionally involved with another woman? Has she failed in her quest of trying to make her husband happy?
Boy, that's such a good question, because my hunch, and I'm not saying this, and I don't want to make women feel bad when I say this, okay? But when I hear about a husband being emotionally involved with another woman, this is difficult to say because I don't want to put the blame on her, because men sin, and I'm not trying to take any responsibility away from them. But so often, Byron, the women do not understand men, and they are not meeting the men's needs at home. And it's just easier for the husband to stray when that's going on. Now, again, don't hear me say I'm blaming women, because men have a responsibility to be faithful. But over and over again, when these husbands do stray, and I discuss this with the women, I feel like they don't get anything about what it really means and what it looks like to a man to be loved.
What was the most difficult chapter for you to write in wife school?
I don't even think I have a difficult chapter. I can't even think of that. I have been studying marriage for 25 years, and I have journals and computer just stacked full of documents. And so what was difficult for me was to take all those documents, and this is what took 6 months, and organize all of those into topics. And so it just took a lot of time. But I just kind of had a plan that I worked on this book 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. Zig Ziglar said this: you lay bricks every day, and before long you have a cathedral. And so all of a sudden I had a book because I just plowed forward. But nothing was really, it was just tedious, and you just walk through it.
Well, was there a particular chapter that really spoke to you more? I know the whole book is a reflection of your time in counseling and your time of prayer and studying Scripture, but was there one particular thing in the book that stands out to you overall?
Well, I loved writing this book. What this book is really marriage advice written in a chick lit book, okay? And that's what's so fun about the book, is because it's the story of this real abrasive and bratty protagonist, Jessica. And I love the chapter. Well, I don't want to spoil it for the readers, but there's a problem in the book, and her name is Indigo, and she's at her husband's office, and it's a fun story because of Indigo. And so I had a lot of fun writing this story because it was messy, and Jessica and Matthew's relationship was really ugly. I mean, they thought they were divorcing. She was considering giving up on the marriage early in the book.
And I can't help but think there might be somebody listening right now that at the bottom maybe are ready for pursuing a divorce in their relationship, Christian couple, maybe with children. But there is an opportunity to save, restore, or find hope, even when it just seems to be all nothing but crumbs.
I mean, I've seen it over and over again, Byron. I've just seen it over and over and over again. And if women will say, okay, I've got to learn this subject. And I don't read the book once, okay? And I tell people this, find some friends and go through each chapter and untie the knots. Because this thinking, here's our natural inclination right here at this low level. And then God's ways are not our ways. And so God's ways are so different. So if we're not washing our brain with how to treat our husbands, we default to contentious, blaming them, worried about ourselves. You know, I've tried to give women in this book this is where you want to learn. You want to learn so you can give your husband this. I mean, I still fail. This was last night in my home. I said to my husband at some point, it was really kind of funny. I said, okay, I know you're upset with me. What's that about? And so he ended up telling me. And so I said, oh, blah, blah, blah. This is how men feel. He goes, is that chapter 22? I mean, so I'm not saying you ever really get this. I mean, it's a work all the time to be thinking of others because we're so self-centered.
Is there a special time when, say, a woman, there's issues that she would like to discuss with her husband that really on her heart, maybe these top 5 concerns that she has, but knowing when to communicate them? Well, how important is that?
Oh, it's so huge. And, one thing my husband and I do so that happens is we have we have prayer time together every Sunday afternoon. And we have a journal where we list the things we're praying for. So we always start out with the things from last week that we're praying for. Now, my highest priority in this life, and I fail at this, but is to make my husband happy. Ruth Bell Graham is the one who said her job is not to make Billy holy, but to make him happy. And so once I quit trying to make my husband holy and focused on making him happy, our marriage flip-flopped. And so anyhow, we have this time on Sunday afternoon. We have a blue journal, and we write down the things, and the Super Bowl was on. And so he was ready. We was during the 2 games, we were trying to hurry. And he's so cute. And I was saying, okay, I have one more thing to talk about. And it was my top thing on my list that I'm asking him for. And so I make sure that I'm being the kind of wife that he needs. And then I do ask for the things I want. And women, of course, we have to ask. And, we're a gift to our husbands to kind of show our husbands maybe areas that they need. But, I always tell the girls, try not to ask for more than one thing at a time because it overwhelms them. And they feel like they're a failure because men kind of judge how they're doing as a husband by how happy their wife is. So if their wife is happy, they feel like they're being a good husband. So if you're complaining all the time, and men aren't like us, they just can't be doing all the things they're thinking about and then trying to fix a bunch of things in the marriage. So go easy on them and pick one thing.
The book is called Wife School, where women learn the secrets of making husbands happy, by Julie Gordon, our guest today on Mid-South Viewpoint. Julie, if those listening would like to get a copy of your book, where can they go?
Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble is bn.com. Those are the cheapest places to get it.
All right. How long did it take you to write this book?
It took a year for the first draft, and I sent it out and got comments back, and so revised it, and then that took another 6 months. And then it took about 6 months to get it printed.
Well, I'm so glad that our mutual friend, Kathy, arranged our time together, and we could sit down and talk about Wife School. Have to have you come back.
I loved it. Thank you, Byron.
Thanks so much. Friends, I appreciate you tuning in. Be sure and go to one of those websites, Amazon.com, to check out Julie's book. Also, you have a website, Julie.
Yes, it's juliegordon.net. And you can click on the tab that says Study Guide /Mentoring Guide. And so if you have some young girls you would like to take through the book, all you have to do is be ahead of whoever you take through, okay? Or if your women's ministry would like to set up a mentoring situation where you have the older women teaching the younger women, the mentoring guide is right there. Or if you're in a book club, and the study guide is right there. And it takes you through the heavies, the Titus 2, the 1 Peter 3, the real heavy scriptures. It takes you through those.
All right. Thanks so much, Julie. Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I do appreciate you stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Mid-South Viewpoint. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us. Our address is wcrv@bottradionetwork.com. This has been Mid-South Viewpoint, another Christian news and information feature from Bott Radio Network 640 AM.